Hello everyone, I am Kiran Joshi. Welcome you all in class 7 history. This is second chapter of history, New Kings and Kingdoms. We know by the 7th century there were many big landlords or warrior chiefs in different regions of the subcontinent known as Samantas or subordinates of kings. They were supposed to present gifts to their overlords or kings, be present in their courts and provide military support. Many a times, these Samantas became so wealthy and powerful that they declared themselves Mahasamanta or Mahamandaleshwara, even sometimes declared their independence from their kings. For example, Rashtrakutas in Deccan, earlier they were under Chalukyas of Karnataka. In mid 8th century, a Rashtrakuta chief, Danti Durga, defeated and removed his Chalukya king and performed a ritual called Hiranyagarbha to be considered as Kshatriya. In some places, even Brahmanas established kingdoms by giving up their traditional professions and developing military skills. Many new kings declared themselves as Maharaja Adhiraja, Tribhuvan Chakravartin, etc. To run these states or kingdoms, resources were obtained from peasants, cattle keepers, artisans in the form of their produce. Revenue was also collected from traders. These resources were used to finance kings' establishment, for the construction of temples and forts, to fight wars, etc. The wars were fought to obtain wealth and to have access to land as well as trade routes. The persons for collecting revenue as well as for the army were recruited from influential families and the positions were generally hereditary. Now the Prashastis. So Prashastis were composed by learned Brahmanas who sometimes helped the ruler in administration also. Kings often rewarded Brahmanas by grants of land, and the record of grants of land was made on copper plates. They were given to those who received the land. An author named Kalna composed a long Sanskrit poem in 12th century about the kings of Kashmir. Kalna used a variety of sources, including inscriptions, documents, eyewitness accounts, and earlier histories to write his account. Generally, Prashastis were composed in praise of the king, but here Kalna was often critical about rulers and their policies. We know that ruling dynasties often tried to control other regions or areas. Such an area was the city of Kannauj in the Ganga Valley. For centuries, Gurjara Pratihara, Rashtrakuta, and Pala, these three dynasties fought for control over Kannauj. Therefore, it is often described as tripartite struggle. Mostly rulers built large temples to show their power and resources. So, when they attacked one another's kingdom, they chose to target temples which were often extremely rich. For example, Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, Afghanistan, ruled from 997 to 1030. He extended his control over parts of Central Asia, Iran, and the northwestern part of the subcontinent. He raided the subcontinent every year, targeting the wealthy temples, for example, the Somnath temple of Gujarat. He carried away the wealth and used it to create excellent capital city at Ghazni. Mahmud of Ghazni assigned Al-Biruni, a scholar, to write an account of the subcontinent, which he prepared with the consultation of Sanskrit scholars. This Arabic account, Kitabul Hind, is an important source for historians. Some other kings engaged in warfare included Chahmanas, later they were called Chauhans. They ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer and attempted to expand their control to the west and the east. The most prominent Chahmana ruler was Prithviraj III, who defeated an Afghan ruler, Muhammad Ghori, in 1191. But the very next year, in 1192, he himself was defeated by him. So, this was a general description of the new dynasties and kings. Let's have a closer look of a particular dynasty, the Cholas, for better understanding. The Muttarayar, a minor chiefly family, were subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram and held power in the Kaveri Delta. Vijayalaya of the Chola family from Urayur captured the delta from Muttarayar and in mid 9th century and built the town of Thanjavur. The Vijayalaya's successors conquered neighboring regions and the kingdom grew in size and power. Raja I is considered the most powerful Chola ruler. He became king in 985 and expanded control over most of Pandyan and Pallava territories. His son Rajendra I continued his policies and raided the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka, and Southeast Asian countries by developing a navy. Raja and Rajendra built many big temples at Thanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which are the splendid examples of architectural and sculptural skills. Often settlements grew around the Chola temples. The rulers also gifted lands to the temples. The produce of this land was given to those who worked at the temple, such as priests, cooks, garland makers, sweepers, dancers, musicians, etc. Thus, temples were the center of economic, social, and cultural life. The Chola temples were also the center of craft production. The Chola bronze images are considered amongst the finest in the world. If you look at the area of Cholas in the map, you will notice several branches of river Kaveri before entering to Bay of Bengal. They deposit fertile soil on their banks and also provide moisture, which is good for rice cultivation. From 5th or 6th century, large scale cultivation started in this area. For that, in some areas forests had to be cleared, in some other areas land had to be leveled, embankments had to be built to prevent flooding, and canals had to be constructed to provide water to the fields. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. Wells were dug, rainwater was collected by constructing huge tanks. The irrigation work was done through planning, that is, organizing labor and resources, maintaining these works, and deciding on how water to be shared. The new rulers and the people of villages took active interest in these activities. Now, with the spread of irrigation agriculture, settlements of peasants, which were known as Ur, became prosperous. Several such villages formed larger units. They were called Nadu. The Nadu, along with the village council, collected taxes, gave justice, and many other administrative works. The Chola government gave the responsibility of controlling the affairs of the Nadu to rich peasants of the Villala caste. Some rich landlords were given the titles like Muvenda Velan, Ariyar, that means chief, by the Chola kings and were assigned with important offices of the Chola state in the center. As Brahmanas often received land grants or which were called Brahmadeya, a large number of Brahman settlements emerged in the Kaveri Valley and in other parts of South India. An assembly or sabha of important Brahmana landholders looked after each Brahmadeya. These assemblies recorded their decisions in detail in inscriptions such as on the stone walls of temples. There were associations of traders called nagrams which performed administrative works in towns. How was the Sabha or assembly organized? The details we get from the inscriptions from the Uttara Merur in Chingleput district in Tamil Nadu. The Sabha had separate committees to look after different tasks such as irrigation, gardens, temples, etc. The nominees of or the names of eligible to be members for different committees were written on small tickets or piece of palm leaf. Then these tickets were put into an earthenware pot, and a young boy was asked to take out the tickets one by one for each committee. That's it about the new kingdoms and kings. Now there are some questions for revision. So the first question is, how did the Rashtrakutas become powerful? Second, write a short note on Chamana's rulers. Third, who were the parties involved in the tripartite struggle? Fourth, what kind of irrigation works were developed in the Tamil region? Fifth, what were the activities associated with Chola temples? I hope you found this presentation useful. Thank you.